Anthony Albanese gave a speech last night emphasising Australia's independence from the United States. Now, this speech was to mark 80 years since the death of Labor PM John Curtin, who Albanese reminded everyone famously refused a US request to send Australian troops to Burma during World War II.
Our alliance with the US ought to be remembered as a product of Curtin's leadership in defence and foreign policy, not the extent of it. Because Curtin's famous statement that Australia looked to America was much more than the idea of trading one strategic guarantor for another, or swapping an alliance with the old world for one with the new. It was a recognition that Australia's fate would be decided in our region.
Yeah, our independence from the US is a curious thing to be trumpeting when we're trying to negotiate a trade deal with the US, asking for nuclear submarines from the US and counting on US defence in the event of war.
Yeah, it's absolutely astounding that he said this. Firstly, I want to point out that Anthony Albanese called this his Australian way speech. Now, a couple of questions on that. Firstly, in 2025, what would the Prime Minister of Australia actually define the Australian way as? Because if I think about what the Australian way is I think of, say, the values of our Anzacs, the spirit of mateship, the spirit of bravery. I think of a cohesive society. I think of assimilation. I think of hard work and determination. Yet when I think back to the last 3 years in particular of this Albanese government, I think it's actually completely the opposite. The fibres that once made this country great are fracturing at the seams. We've just had an example of that during this latest alleged act of anti-Semitism. We've got people who've been come into this country who hate us, some who don't want to assimilate, some who don't want to cherish our values. So I'm not sure what Australian way the Prime Minister's talking to. Secondly, he talked up Australia's independence, as you said. Is this some sort of a declaration, James, an intent for some sort of independence from the United States? Shocking time to be doing it when we're already on the nose with our closest ally, but also just shows just how weak the Prime Minister is when it comes to foreign policy. This is really his Achilles heel. He is absolutely hopeless when it comes to any sort of global world affairs, always shies away from it, always tries to move it on. And I also felt like this speech was more friendly to China than it was to the United States. And we know he's got his all-important visit to China coming up.
OK, so I want to disagree with you that Anthony Albanese is weak on foreign policy. I don't think he's weak at all. I think he knows exactly what he's doing. He's going to visit Xi Jinping for the 4th time when he's never once met with Donald Trump. That's not weak, it's deliberate. He knows what he's doing and he's shifting Australia away from the United States, where the Labor Party have an ideological difference, not just with the US, but particularly with Donald Trump, which brings me to the other thing you said. When Albanese talks about the Australian way, what is the Australian way? I don't think he's referring to values. He's simply trying to differentiate himself from Donald Trump's America First. Well, Albanese is the Australian way. It's just another way of saying we are not Donald Trump. For Anthony Albanese to be stressing Australia's sovereignty is all well and good if you're investing in Australia's defence. But we've got enough ammunition for 1 week, then we'd be out of bullets. We've got one submarine that is seaworthy right now. We've got too few soldiers. So go ahead and stress national sovereignty if you want to defend the country, but don't talk about our national sovereignty and the Australian way when you leave us defenceless. At a perilous time in the US-Australia alliance, for Albanese to be making this speech without any nuance, creating so many questions as to what does this actually mean, where are the Labor government when it comes to the US, is quite reckless, to be honest.
I think that's a fair point.
And if you can't even declare China a threat when you have a speech like that at a time when there's geopolitical tensions, it's incredibly irresponsible when there's so much riding on our US alliance now. Correct.
Yeah.
To give that speech at this time.
I completely agree with you, and we will have expert analysis on this speech coming up later in the show, so do stick around for that.